Guys, welcome to another episode of QuizMe, Quibski Solutions Architect. So my guest today is Joseph from currently residing in Australia, correct? Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. So
Yes,
Joseph, could you
actually.
introduce yourself?
So Joseph Pineda moved here in Australia a month and a half ago. Previously, actually, I just finished my master's, but beforehand, I was doing project management, infrastructure management. So I was mainly a database administrator at the beginning of my career, working for Globe. Then worked my way to infrastructure in the banks in Singapore, and then doing project management
Nice.
afterwards. And now I took the AWSSA exam because, yeah, for number one, upskill, two, the trend is there, and then three, I think it's a great way for me to learn how to be self-sufficient in building my own things. And I think AWS is a great place for that, a great way
All
for
right.
that.
Okay. Thank you very much. No. So let's get on to our quiz or exam part. So I'll give you five random questions powered by Tutorials Dojo. And as we read them through, just give us your thoughts on why you particularly chose those answers. All right, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. So here's your first question. So your first question states that uh, let's just scroll up. Yeah, a loan processing application is hosted in a single on-demand EC2 instance in your VPC. To improve the scalability of your application, you have to use auto-scaling to automatically add new EC2 instances to handle a surge of incoming requests. Which of the following items should be done in order to add an existing EC2 instance to an auto-scaling group? Choose two. Yan. So,
Okay. Okay, interesting. Actually, I think familiar tong
mm,
question na to kasi yesterday ata somebody raised a post in the user group
mm-hmm.
about this. Pretty much the same. Okay, so the question is about number one, the EC2
Yes.
instances is existing, and the second one is that you have to add it in an auto scaling group. So it's asking for the
Mm-hmm.
conditions, the conditions on uh, how can you add or if you can add an existing EC2 instance in that auto scaling group. Um, so there are a couple of things. So the first one, you have to ensure that the AMI used to launch the instance still exists. Now this is important because you have to use that AMI to for the
Mm-hmm.
definition. The second one, you have to ensure that the instance is in a different availability zone as the auto scaling. Um, I think this is incorrect because the EC2 instance actually has to be in the same availability zone as the
Okay.
autoscaling to see each other. The third one, you have to ensure that the AMI used to launch the instance no longer exists, which is the opposite of actually of the first choice. So I don't think this is the
Okay.
right one. The fourth one, you must stop the you must stop the instance first, which I think is incorrect. The EC2 instance actually has to be running. I believe that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
conditions. And finally, the instance is launched into one of the availability zones defined in auto scaling group, which is the opposite of the second
Okay.
option, which is incorrect. So I would say that the answers are first um, and the fifth.
First and the fifth. Okay. Is this your final answer?
Yeah,
All
sige
right.
lang.
Sige. Let's check. Yep. Let me click that again. It's a little shy. Oh no. Why won't it click check? Okay. There seems to be like a bug. Let's mark that as review. Wait wait a minute. I'm having technical difficulties here. Let me just reopen the Tutorials Dojo. Sorry, guys. Let me just recheck that. Now, if I think it's correct naman, no? Pero I don't know why. Pero let me see if that was question number 6. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so I skipped that question. Let me go back to number 6 again and then press check one more time. Okay, there's a bug. But I do believe your answer. It must be correct. So let's go to to the next question then. Okay.
Okay. No
So let
worries.
me first click check, no? But just to see, we'll skip this question. Let me just see very fast if the check works. Oh no, it seems like it's a bug. I can't check any question. So let me try to reload. This is our first time, no? So yeah, that's what we have to do when we have yeah, a quiz like that.
Agile.
Customer
Customer
feedback
feedback.
immediately.
Real
Uh,
feedback.
and as you can see, we've lost already that question. We can't find it anymore. So we'll assume it's correct because I believe it's also correct. Your answers there.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll go to our next
Thank you.
question. Our next question states that. Oh, sorry, one more time, wrong. This is what you call what do you call this? Live debugging. Oh,
So,
live
live troubleshooting.
troubleshooting. So let's
Mm.
just go to the professional ba? Ano pa? Associate. I think they probably updated the course, no, to be the second version, and so that's why.
For the new one. Actually, interesting thing, and I think it will be
Mm.
helpful for others also. Um, yung sa exam ko actually, my computer session crashed.
Wow,
And
interesting.
so, yeah, 40 minutes of my time uh,
Mm-mm.
were gone, or at least disappeared. And I only found out my results a day after. I didn't really know exactly what
Mm-mm.
happened right after my
So,
exam.
okay.
Interesting
And
story.
so it didn't you weren't able to resume or anything like that.
No, no, no. So I was only able to answer it like an hour,
Mm-mm.
an hour, yeah,
Okay,
an hour and 20 minutes.
interesting. Okay, so let's move to our second question now. No, good thing you passed, even with the computer crashing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still lucky. At least I'm not
Mm-mm.
sick, right? Mm.
Right. Our next question
Okay.
is:
Uh,
one member of your DevOps team consulted you about a connectivity problem in one of your Amazon EC2 instance. The application architecture is initially set up with four EC2 instances, each with an EIP address that all belong to a public non-default subnet. You launch another instance to handle the increasing workload on your application. The EC2 instances also belong to the same security group. Everything works well as expected, except for one of the EC2 instances which is not able to send nor receive traffic over the internet. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue?
okay. So this is essentially asking about what would be the requirements in order for you to connect an EC2 instance in your public subnet, supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
VPC or something, to the internet. And there are a couple of requirements there. The first one is you have to have an internet
Correct.
gateway, attach it also. Uh, and then second, a third one is
Mm-hmm.
a security group that you have to find that. The route table, you have to define that as well and make sure that uh, you have the definition for 0.0.0.0
Mm-hmm.
slash 0. Uh, and also obviously have either a public IP address or an EIP address. And I think the clue here that's very important is the public non-default subnet. So if it's a non-default subnet, then it won't automatically have that definition of 0.0.0.0, and also the public
Mm-hmm.
IP address. So from here, so first option, in CE2 instance is running in an availability zone that is not connected to an internet gateway. Um, it's
Mm-hmm.
not correct because it's already set up
Mm-hmm.
that way.
So, and also mention that all
The
other
second one,
instances work except this one instance, right?
exactly. The route table is not properly configured to allow traffic to, and this is again incorrect because if the other four instances can connect, then that's the route table should have been
Mm-hmm.
defined already. And if they it's part of the same thing. EC2 instance does not have a private IP address associated with it, and EC2 instance does not have a public IP address associated with it. So most likely it's the final one. It doesn't have the EC2 instance does not have a public IP
All
address.
right.
Yeah, so yun yung yung default. It doesn't create that automatically, the
Okay.
public
Final
IP
answer.
address. Stand corrected a while ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's check. Then hopefully this time it works. Oh no! It works. It works. But I thought, oh no, it doesn't work.
Okay.
It works. Yeah, you're correct, no? So you mentioned the requirements there: internet gateway, your route table, your security group. You. There's also a knuckles or network ACLs, and your public
Oh
IP
yeah.
address. All right. So that's your explanation there. Whoever wants to read, and a very nice diagram explaining it. No? So that's a good thing there. Also explains further why the options are true and false in some cases. All right, next question. You have a static corporate website hosted in a standard S3 bucket and a new web domain which was registered using Route 53. You are instructed by your manager to integrate these two services in order to successfully launch their corporate website. What are the prerequisites when routing traffic using Route 53 to a website that is hosted in Amazon S3 bucket? Select 2.
Okay. You have a static copy.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So this is basically static website request. So since you mentioned that the bucket has
Uh-huh.
been created, the first option I would say is that the S3 bucket name must be the same as the
Okay.
domain name. It's a
How
requirement
about the
there.
first option? What will you say about the
Uh,
first option? The MX.
Also, the record set must be of type MX. Well, number one, MX is for mail exchange, so it doesn't really matter anyway, and you don't really have to think about
Yeah, yeah,
that
that's
part
for
at the
mailing,
moment.
right? Emailing. Okay. Yes.
Yep. And then the third, the cross-origin resource sharing course option should be enabled in the S3 bucket. So actually, this option is irrelevant at the moment because the question is more of how to um, make sure that your Route 3 is properly configured for that
Mm-hmm.
static website. And course is really for another feature where you are able to share resources or the users can access the content
Mm.
or the object in 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 another
Yes.
origin. So third is not the
Mm-hmm.
right answer. So the fourth one is a registered domain, and I think that's self-explanatory because if you want the users to access it over the web, then you need to have that domain name registered. And then finally, S3 bucket must be in the same region as the hosted zone. So I don't think this is relevant at the moment, although it does bear
Yeah.
meaning in another
Yeah.
topic. So I think it's
Yes.
second and fourth.
So yes, you mentioned the hosted zone. It's a global scope. So Route 53 is global scope, and so
Yes,
it's not region specific, right? So that's why not
correct.
needed. Okay. Are you okay with your answer already? Final answer. Final answer. Let's check. All right, that's correct. Very good. Okay, it gives you an explanation there again for those who want to read. Okay, next question here. You are helping out a new DevOps engineer to design her first architecture in AWS. Okay, we have a female DevOps engineer. She is planning
Yeah,
to help a
like
highly
that.
available and fault-tolerant architecture, which is composed of an ELB and an ASG of EC2 instances deployed across multi-AZ. This will be used by an online accounting application which requires path-based routing, host-based routing, and bidirectional communication channel using WebSockets. Which is the most suitable type of ELB that you should recommend for her to use?
Okay. So it's the question. At least the choices are different types of load
Correct.
balancers. So there's application, there's classic, there's network. Uh, okay. So in this case, we're talking about web, and in among the three, we can already eliminate the classic load balancer because this is for TCP. It's actually for performance. It's not really about web-based stuff. Um, so we're down to application load balancer and classic load balancer. So the second and the third option should be incorrect already because my network load
Mm-hmm.
balancer done. Now the clue here, at least in the question, is about path-based routing, host-based routing, and bidirectional communication channels using web
Mm-hmm.
sockets. And among the two, because classic load balancing was there for you know
Quite some time.
um,
Mm.
pre-cloud, pre-cloud, blah blah. So to compatibility and application load balancer was more of what AWS offers for more configuration. Get more
Mm.
rules and all that, and at the same time has that path-based routing and host-based routing. So I would say the answer is the first choice, which is application load
Application.
balancer, and it's also about HTTP.
All right, let's
Yes.
check. All right, that is correct. Application load balancer. Yes, and you're correct, no? Those new features are not supported by the classic load balancer, especially the
Right.
WebSockets. So
Right.
classic load balancers does not support HTTP version 2. I think it's only up to 1.2. And so that's
Correct.
why it's important to use newer versions. Okay. So this will be your last question. So you are working as a
Okay.
solutions architect for a leading commercial bank, which has recently adopted a hybrid cloud architecture. You have to ensure that the required data security is in place for all of their AWS resources to meet the strict financial regulatory requirement. In the AWS shared responsibility model, which security aspect are the responsibilities of the customer? Choose two or select two.
Okay. So the question really asks your knowledge about the AWS shared responsibility model, which is uh, essentially a document that AWS gives to their customers about which part of uh, your infrastructure is going to be managed
Mm-hmm.
by themselves and managed by yours. So shared
Correct.
responsibility. And um, something about I'm forgetting the prepositions. Pero parang AWS is in charge of the
Of the cloud,
AWS
yes. Of the
and
cloud, yes.
the cloud, and then you are in charge of in the
Correct.
cloud. So I think that's a big clue already. So you just have to identify at least among the five choices which one is in the cloud and which one is
Correct.
off
Correct.
the cloud or which is part. So the first one is virtualization infrastructure, and virtualization talks about essentially being able to talk about workspaces for your company or office, and I think that's more uh, uh, on
Mm-hmm.
off the cloud. The second one is IAM policies and credentials management. So IAM policies and credentials management is essentially management of your users, your security, groups, roles, and it's defining yung IAM product. So that's definitely one of your
So this is an
responsibilities.
option for you.
The third one is yes, and the third one is physical security of hardware. So that's the benefit of the cloud itself. You really don't even have to know what the hardware is, except for snowballs and
Mm-hmm.
snowmobiles. So that's off the cloud. So that's not part of the answer. And fourth one is managing the underlying network infrastructure. And the fifth one is also OS patching of an EC2 instance. Actually, interesting. So the fourth one is definitely not your
Mm-hmm.
responsibility or not the customer's responsibility because it's underlying network infrastructure. Again, you don't see that. It's the data centers, the availability zones. So the fifth one, what's interesting about it is that OS patching of an EC2 instance is correct. So it's
Mm-hmm.
the choice. But there was a real clue on the EC2 instance, and that's important because if you're talking about other products such as RDS, DynamoDB, you really don't have to worry about OS patching. You can't even log into the server
Correct.
underlying that. So, but this one, you're in charge of managing your OSs because EC2 instance is essentially your Linux or your Windows
Yes,
servers.
correct. Okay. So final answer. All right.
Yes.
Let's click check. All right, it is correct as you can see. So far everything's all good, no? So as mentioned here, this is
Mm-hmm.
the security in the cloud and also security of the cloud. So customer is responsible for security in the cloud, and those are your guide. All right. Okay, so that ends our exam part. So Sir
Thank you.
Sir Joseph, what are your advices for young engineers out there? Should they also try Singapore and Australia?
Okay. Akala ko sa AWS.
Also in AWS, of course, no.
um,
In the scenario of AWS across in
I
the
see.
globe there.
Hmm. So for the Filipinos out there, at least, or well, any other
Yes.
person out there, um, I think it's more of a personal choice. What's important is the opportunity that you get out of
Mm-hmm.
your company, whether you are in the country that you live in or you need to move to another country. It's the opportunities on challenging yourself and learning more about the technologies and the products that you want to learn and you want to take advantage of, like AWS. And I think this is very, I mean, right now in the global situation, we're required to work from home. We have to be remote. The purpose of having an office has been diluted because everybody's working at their houses. So pretty much you can say that you're working in Vietnam or in Singapore or in
Mm-hmm.
Australia, uh, but you're still doing the same thing. And I think it's that in that part, you need to think about seriously where you want to go or what you want to do in your career. On the other hand, though, moving to Singapore and Australia, personally for me, was a great way to improve not just on a professional development, but on a
Mm,
personal development, because then you also expose yourself to the international scene and get to work with them. Like, yes, merong work from home issue ngayon, but normally you have to work with them in the office and you have to
mm,
communicate and all that. And right now, with the technology being, it's increasing and it's quickly growing, replacing a lot of jobs that we normally did before. It's important that you are able to communicate with anybody and work with them. And being in a international scene such as Singapore and Australia, you get to work with a team where there are at least five or six, seven, eight nationalities. So I think that's very vital also from a career perspective and also from exploration. You want to know more about these things in life and see a different perspective outside of what you've been used to doing when
mm.
you're growing up.
And would you say, since you have a more global perspective, would you say how much leading is AWS in the cloud space so far, based on what you see observe there?
Okay, so Well, AWS is leading in
Mm,
all fronts, simply because they started
mm,
very early. 2006, they were already serving AWS, and at least the other ones were more concentrated on
mm,
their cash cows. Oracle introduced their cloud also around the same time, but they were only focused on
mm,
databases or
mm,
minor items. So in Singapore, AWS is definitely leading. Switzerland, it's definitely leading. Um, in Australia, it's a balance between, it's a tie almost between Azure and
mm.
AWS. And well, syempre China, that's
Yes, of
Alibaba.
course.
So uh, I think if you want to have that career moving forward outside the Philippines or any of our countries and want to work here, it's very important to learn uh, one of these cloud solutions. And AWS is actually a very
Mm,
competent one because there's so many features every year. They will always have new releases, and uh, if they did it, if you want to learn Azure and GCP or Cloud, Oracle, or IBM, most likely there's also something in AWS that is parallel to that. So it's easy to translate or migrate your
yeah,
knowledge.
correct, correct. I even heard nga before that they say the AWS is first, and then the features is usually copied to another cloud. From the other cloud, just try
Oh,
to follow,
exactly.
or give something similar. All right. Okay. So that's
Yes,
thank you for
yes.
your time. I hope you I hope
Thanks.
you find your find the best for your career there abroad. And thank you very much for giving us this time and sharing your wisdom to us. Right. So thank you very much and goodbye
Thanks.
to our viewers. Don't forget to always like and subscribe. And you can also follow Sir Joseph in our description. So we'll be placing his information in the description. All right. So thank you and goodbye, folks. Like and subscribe. Thank you. Yay.